I want to give you a hypothetical scenario. This man right here is Seth Hennigan, a quarterback out of Memphis. I have no idea where he's going to get drafted or if he's going to get drafted at all. However, if he does get drafted, it's not going to be until day 3, barring anything crazy, if you're watching as of this video getting released. In this hypothetical scenario, the Jacksonville Jaguars decide if they're going to take him. They don't have a third quarterback on their roster. Trevor Lawrence has had some injuries over the past few seasons. They like the way the board fell to them. They view Hennigan pretty highly, and they decide that it's in their best interest to take a flyer on this guy. Now imagine that during the press conference, where the Jaguars explain the draft pick and explain why they chose this man, that general manager James Gladstone says that Hennigan is the next Brett Favre. He's built like Brett Favre, they like the way he plays quarterback, and he's going to be a stud. Never mind the fact that, number one, Hennigan and Favre are not the same weight or height or anything like that, and number two, you just compared a late round pick to a literal Hall of Fame quarterback and one of the greatest to ever do it. You would look at Gladstone as if he had 5 heads and think that he was crazy. Something like that wouldn't make any sense, right? Well, I bring that up because this man right here is the incomparable Paul Brown. Brown is one of the greatest football minds of all time, and the sport would not be where it is today without him. Heck, you could argue that outside of George Halas, there was not a more important figure to the history of professional football than Paul Brown. The man is a Hall of Famer and a legend for a reason. And Brown, most of the time, knew what he was doing. He won 7 championships, he won 213 games, winning over 67% of the time, and he successfully built not one, but 2 franchises that still exist to this day, and was just as good and just as innovative in the mid-1970s as he was in the mid-1940s, which is almost impossible for any coach to do. However, when you're coaching for 3 decades, and when you're around the game for so long in some capacity, whether it be as an owner, a coach, a general manager, or any combination of that, and you're juggling a ton of different hats, you can have a propensity to say some stupid things every now and then that leave other people scratching their heads and wondering where the heck those comments came from. And man, do we have one of those instances today. Because following the 1973 NFL Draft, where the Cincinnati Bengals decided to take a quarterback in one of the later rounds, Paul Brown decided to defend the pick by saying something rather ridiculous that didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense and seemed insane on the surface, and it deserves a deep dive more than half a century later. Because this is the story behind what might just be, considering the circumstances, one of the dumbest draft moments in the history of the Cincinnati Bengals franchise. Be sure to hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. Because we post every single day on here about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL and the NFL Draft with stories like this one. Plus, we have a live stream every single night. If you like that sort of stuff, then like and subscribe and help us grow this football community even more. Thanks in advance for your support, and with that in mind, let's talk about the time that the Bengals really bungled it up. Before I talk about the actual incident in question, we need some context to understand the man that the Bengals drafted in the first place, as in this man right here. This is Indiana quarterback Ted McNulty, and the Bengals were looking for some depth at signal caller following the 1972 season. Ken Anderson, the team's 3rd round pick in 1971, seemed like the future at the position, and Virgil Carter was going to be backing him up in some capacity and was one of the better backups in football, with some even thinking that he was going to win the job over Anderson for 1973. So they had a good 1-2 punch there. But behind those two, they really didn't have a third option that they could go into camp with, especially because no one knew what the heck was going on with the super talented but often injured Greg Cook. So in the 15th round, with pick number 380, the Bengals decided to get some insurance at quarterback and take Indiana signal caller Ted McNulty. The Indiana Hoosiers were not a good football team. In the 3 seasons that McNulty was starting, the Hoosiers won just 9 games total. However, by the time McNulty was done playing with Indiana after the 1972 season, he had become one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten. Keep in mind, in 1970, he was borderline unplayable, as he threw 1 touchdown and 12 interceptions while completing 43% of his passes. But by 1972, he had improved significantly, had become a team captain, and had really picked up the position well, completing 56% of his passes with a positive touchdown-to-interception ratio, with his 906 passing yards ranking 3rd in the Big Ten, and with his 7 touchdown passes ranking 2nd in the Big Ten, only behind Rudy Steiner of Wisconsin. And those numbers could have been higher if he didn't get injured mid-season. There are some guys that really improve year after year because you give them reps and they learn through trial and error and learn through that experience. And McNulty was one of those guys. He was one of just 3 quarterbacks in Indiana history at the time to lead the team in passing yards in 3 consecutive seasons. And he took those reps and went from one of the worst quarterbacks in Division I when he started out to one of the best quarterbacks in the country by the time he was done, and a really good quarterback on the run. And liking the way he played the position, liking the way he improved, and liking the way he threw on the run, the Bengals, needing some depth at the position, took McNulty and made him the 19th quarterback off of the board. Yes, there were 18 quarterbacks that went before him. Just about every team took a quarterback during this draft at some point. Now it's time for Paul Brown to talk about the pick, and this is where you would think that you get some generic coach speak. If Brown said something like, "We saw his improvement year after year, and think he can continue to do that at the pro level," fine, no issue. If Brown said something like, "We like the way the board played out, and McNulty was the best player on there when it was time to pick," fine, no issue. If Brown said something like, "We need some help at quarterback, and McNulty got more reps against high competition than just about anyone else in college," fine, no issue. There's a million different ways you can go with this that I'm not scratching my head at. But Paul Brown did, he did not decide to say any of that. Because when talking about Ted McNulty, he said, and I quote, "He's the Sonny Jurgensen type in build, and has a real quick release. Our scouts think well of him." The Sonny Jurgensen type? Did you just compare pick number 380 to Sonny Jurgensen? I'm sorry, what? Let's talk about this man right here, Sonny Jurgensen, just to emphasize the complete blasphemy of this statement, because there are very few draft picks that should ever be compared right off the bat before playing a game to a Hall of Famer, and Ted freaking McNulty is not one of them. Sonny Jurgensen is one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the sport. By this point in his career, even though Jurgensen was still playing at 39 years old, he was a lock to make the Hall of Fame whenever the time came. Jurgensen led the league in passing yardage 5 times. At the time, no one had ever accomplished that feat in the National Football League, although some had 4, and Otto Graham had 5 when we count his time with the AAFC. After the 1972 season, Jurgensen ranked 5th all-time in passing yards, sitting as one of just 5 quarterbacks ever to have over 30,000 career yards. He had 238 career passing touchdowns, which ranked 3rd in NFL history. The only guys ahead of him at the time were Johnny Unitas and Y.A. Tittle, regarded by many as 2 of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. He was one of just 5 players in NFL history at the time to complete over 2,000 career passes. He was a 5-time Pro Bowler. He was a member of the All-1960s team. He led the league in touchdowns twice. He was named to an AP All-Pro team 3 times. You get the idea. Point is, Sonny Jurgensen was one of the greatest to ever do it. And if you created a Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks before the AFL-NFL merger, odds are Sonny Jurgensen would be on it. So for Paul Brown, who clearly knows his stuff, to come out there and say about Ted McNulty that he's like Sonny Jurgensen in any way whatsoever is absolutely insane. Because here's the other thing about McNulty. He was the 19th quarterback off the board and was taken in the 15th round. That round is where players go to die. No one makes it out of that round. The previous year in 1972, there were 26 players taken in the 15th round. Of those 26 guys, 23 of them never even so much as played a single snap in the NFL. Only 3 guys, Chicago Bears running back Roger Lawson, Philadelphia Eagles running back Tom Sullivan, and Kansas City Chiefs defensive back Larry Marshall, played in the league. That means that more than 88% of the players heard their name called, and that was the end of it. 4 of the 26 guys taken in the 15th round of the 1971 draft played a snap, and one of those guys played 2 games. 3 of the 26 guys in the 15th round of 1970 played a snap. 3 of the 26 guys in the 15th round of 1969 played a snap. 3 of the 26 guys taken in the 15th round in 1968 played a snap. I think you get the idea. In the previous 5 drafts, of the 130 guys chosen in the 15th round, 16 of them ended up playing 1 down in the NFL or the AFL. If you can find someone in this round who knows how to hold a football, honestly, that's a win. Let alone anyone who's going to play for you, let alone a guy who you're comparing to Sonny Jurgensen, as in the man you've been watching this whole time. Ted McNulty's odds of making it were already slim, and no one expected anything. But now, you go ahead and you compare him to one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time and a living legend? We've got some issues. And I know what you might be saying. Come on, you're over-exaggerating here. Brown didn't say Sonny Jurgensen, he said Sonny Jurgensen type in build. That's a very different thing. And to that I say, hogwash, absolutely not. No, it's not. First off, Jurgensen and McNulty are nowhere close to each other in terms of build. McNulty is 6 feet tall and weighs 190 pounds. Sonny Jurgensen is 5'11" and weighs 202 pounds. 6 feet and 5'11" are not the same thing. If you don't believe me, go on any dating app and put your height in as 6 feet tall and see how wildly different your results on the app will be compared to what happens if you put your height in as 5'11". 1 inch can make all the difference. 1 inch is not an insignificant number.
That's what she said.
I'm sorry, I had to do it, but still, 1 inch difference and a 12-pound difference is not the same build. That's the height and the weight difference between Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff, just for some perspective. That's a pretty big difference. When I think of 2 guys with the same build, I think of something where you can put both men in one of those green screen suits and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the 2 guys at all. I think of something where if you were to cover up their face and all of the recognizable features and ask people to identify which person is which, no one would be able to do so. However, that's not even close to the case here. If you did that with a person who was 6 feet tall and weighing 190 pounds, and a person who was 5'11" tall and weighing 202 pounds, everyone is going to know who is who. They don't have the same build. That's not how this works. There's a pretty big and substantial enough difference where you can't do that. So why I had to bring Sonny Jurgensen into this makes no sense. And even with that, I genuinely don't know if Paul Brown knew how measurements worked. Seriously, I'm not kidding. Because later on in the press conference, when talking about McNulty, he said he's a shade taller than Virgil Carter. The only problem? McNulty is 6 feet tall, and Virgil Carter is 6'1". How can you be taller than a man you're shorter than? How does that make any sense? So just to recap, Sonny Jurgensen and Ted McNulty are the same height, except McNulty is taller than Virgil Carter, despite the fact that of those 3 quarterbacks listed, Carter is the only one who clears 6 feet. Yet, McNulty has the same build apparently as a guy who is under 6 feet. Is your brain wrapped in nuts yet? Is your mind in a pretzel? Because mine sure is. Mine freaking is. Not saying the comparison has to be a perfect 1-to-1. If one guy is 6 feet tall and weighs 195 pounds, and another guy is 6 feet tall and weighs 194 pounds, that means nothing. But you can't be going around making comparisons when they're this outlandish, this nonsensical, and this far off the actual definitions of the words you're trying to invoke. Just bizarre. All you had to do was say you like the way he's built, and that's the end of it. Don't go comparing him to Sonny Jurgensen when that's not true, and when that's insane to begin with. Unsurprisingly, McNulty did not play a single down in the NFL. So to be fair to Paul Brown, he only finished his career 32,224 passing yards off of what Sonny Jurgensen accomplished in the NFL, and only 255 passing touchdowns off of what Sonny Jurgensen threw for during his NFL career. So close. Really nailed that one, Coach Brown. And look, there's nothing wrong with liking a player. You're supposed to like the guy that you draft. If you didn't, there'd be some issues. But you can do it in a way without comparing him to one of the all-time greatest quarterbacks, especially when the comparison makes no sense from a physical standpoint, or any standpoint for that matter, and especially when the player himself already has an uphill climb to make it onto the team. So, as a word to the wise for anyone watching this video who works in a front office, do not compare a late-round draft pick to a Hall of Famer before he even takes a snap. You're going to look really stupid. Because after the 1973 NFL Draft, the comparison for Ted McNulty was absolutely McNutty. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and check out my other channels, JG8 for the history of college football, JG7 for the history of baseball, and JG9 News, where we talk about all things happening in the NFL. Join me every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. And make sure to join me live, as we're on stream just about every single day. And thanks to all our Patreon members and our YouTube members for helping out the channel. See how you become a member and show your support financially in the description down below.